Success, the 12 principles. Now let's talk about significance. One of the things that Nella mentioned in my introduction that she read before we showed the video is that I serve on the International Board of Governors of several charitable organizations, one of which is called the Operation Smile. We go into developing countries, we go into countries all over the world, and we have volunteer plastic surgeons from every country you can imagine who perform free surgeries on young children who are born with a cleft lip or cleft palate. You can see the young boy on the left, and it's the before and after. But he is one of the more pleasant young children that you'll see in a photograph. Most of them have giant holes, and they borderline on a monster, if you will, with all due respect. They cannot keep liquid down. They cannot keep food down, so they're usually very malnutrition. They live as a prisoner in their own bodies. They've never kissed their mother goodnight. They're not allowed to go to school. Some of their cultures believe they've been possessed by the devil, and that's why they were born this way. And so many of them never learn to read or write. It's a sad deal. And yet, in the Operation Smile world, we've figured it out. For a 45-minute surgery to the tune of $240, you see what can happen, and you give the kid a smile. Dr. Bill McGee, he was a dentist and then decided to go to medical school, graduated as a plastic surgeon. His wife, Kathy, in that photo, is an intensive care pediatric nurse specializing just in the care of young children. And when he gets out of medical school, he talks several of his friends who also graduated from medical school into going to the Philippines, and they created the first ever Operation Smile mission to give of their time and their talents, to give something back to those who can't help themselves. Wow. And when they show up in Manila, the word spreads throughout the entire country. The physicians are coming into their town, Manila, the capital city, and they're going to perform free surgeries and accommodate these young children and these poor families who would never, ever be able to afford that kind of surgery for themselves. Pretty noble cause. And the word spreads across the land, and 23-year-old Jose hears about the free surgeries that will be performed on individuals who have facial deformities. Jose is born and soon grows a 3.5-pound tumor from the bottom of his lip. At 23 years of age, he can't read, he can't write, he's been a prisoner of his own body. He never was allowed to go to school. The parents in the village wouldn't let their children play with him as if it was contagious. And the only time he could work was at night, and he would go out only under the disguise of a bandana that covered his tumor. And he hears that Dr. McGee and Mrs. McGee and the plastic surgeons are coming to perform free surgery, so he walks 3.5 days over a mountain peak, forges a river, walks the dusty roads, the back roads of Philippines, and comes to Manila, spends the night on the lawn waiting for this amazing miracle to occur in his life the next morning. He goes through the screening process, and because they have limited doctors, limited resources, limited supplies, and their mission is children with cleft lip, cleft palates, he doesn't qualify. He does not pass the pre-screening process and is turned away with the promise that the doctors and nurses were going to return again to Manila within 6 months with more resources, more doctors, more supplies. And he walks the 3.5 days journey back to his village, brokenhearted, 23 years of age, saying, wow, I guess it's just not meant to be. But he puts on his calendar the 6-month point when the doctors had promised to return, and sure enough, the word gets out. Operation Smile comes into Manila, and Jose walks the 3.5 days journey again, scaling the mountain pass, forging the river, walking the dusty roads, comes to Manila, Makes it a little further through the screening process, but again, because he's so old and because they're exclusively focusing in on cleft lip, cleft palates, he's again turned away. Can you imagine? He's so brokenhearted. He walks back to his village and he can't read or write, but he somehow leaves a message that it's time for him to take his life. But the reason why he doesn't is because he knows that there's hope somewhere down the road, that the promise of Operation Smile doctors and nurses again will come back to Manila. And so he hangs on, and sure enough, at that 6-month mark, the word spreads again, and for the last time, he says, I'll give it one more shot, and treks the 3.5 days journey. Sells his only possession, a goat, to help him pay for some transportation so he doesn't have to walk the entire distance by himself. Can afford to pay somebody to float him across the river. Donkey cart to help him over the highest part of the mountain peak. And he arrives in Manila the night before the screening, and he sleeps out in the grass with all the other families. The next morning, he bravely goes through the screening process, and he's the last one to pass. He's given his number, his name is up on the board, and I've been on missions. The tear-jerking part of Operation Smile is when you see how many hundreds and sometimes thousands of people they still have to turn away. Over 300,000 children are born in the world every single year with cleft lip, cleft palates. And for only $240 and 45-minute surgery, we can give them a life. We can change their life forever. Jose passes the screening. Can you imagine? As he shares the story, he starts dreaming mighty dreams. He starts visualizing how he's going to finally learn to read and write and go to school, and he's going to make his family proud. No longer are they going to be discouraged or mortified or embarrassed. And he gets to kiss his mom again goodnight for the very first time. And as he stands there with the number, with his name up on the board, he hears the sobs of the mother standing behind him with her little girl with a big giant hole in her face, realizing that she was next in line had he not passed the screening. So what does Jose do? He turns around and gives the little girl his number and walks the 3.5 days back home to his village, committed to killing himself because he's lived 23 years, now 24, for naught. And because Jose made it through the screening process, Dr. McGee and Mrs. McGee had the medical records of where he lived. And when they heard the story of what Jose had done in giving his number, his chance for a new life away to a little girl, with the help of the military, flew in with a helicopter, flew him from his remote village into Manila, flew him to Norfolk, Virginia. And over a 9-week period of time, Jose went through 9 surgeries. I have a picture of Jose standing in his wedding tuxedo next to his beautiful bride that I didn't put up on the screen. But you can see what a handsome man he is, and decided to put the picture of him kissing the forehead of his brand new little baby in the hospital. Ladies and gentlemen, that's significance. It's becoming as successful as we can possibly be. Studying, investing in ourselves in leadership and management through BIBF. It's doing everything we know how to do to enroll in these magnificent seminars put on by Afra and her amazing company, Shoulder to Shoulder. What a powerful name for a company. But at the end of the day, it's what we do with what we know that matters, is it not? Can you be significant without being a plastic surgeon? Can you be significant without being the CEO of your company, of your bank, of your organization, of your credit, of your travel company? And I say yes. And can you be significant today and every day? Yeah, a young man, he invents an invention that literally changes the world. And as he's getting this national and international recognition and stands on a stage and is given an award, he publicly thanks the author of the book he read that inspired him to invent the invention that changed our lives forever. So when it's time for us to thank who is responsible for changing the world, do we just thank the inventor, or should we thank the author who wrote the book that inspired the inventor to change our lives forever? Or do we owe a gratitude of thanks to the teacher who inspired the student to write the book that inspired the inventor to invent the invention that changed our lives forever? Or do we owe our debt of gratitude to the successful businesswoman who became so successful that she endowed a scholarship that allowed this young girl to go to college as a poor, underserved girl? And because of this businesswoman's success and her endowment, it allowed this underserved girl to go to college to become a teacher who inspired one of her students to become an author who wrote the book that inspired the inventor to invent the invention that changed our lives forever. Or should we thank the doctor that saved the life of the young girl in the medical clinic who grew up to have the child who became a successful businesswoman, successful enough to endow a scholarship so that this poor underserved girl could go to college and become a teacher who inspired one of her students to become an author who wrote the book that inspired the inventor to change our lives forever? Or should we thank the old man, the delivery man, who on a brutal day where everybody else was complaining about the weather, got in his truck and delivered the lumber that was used to build the medical clinic, where the doctor could go to work and use his skill and education to save the baby's life, who grew up as a mother to have the child who became the successful businesswoman who endowed the scholarship, which allowed this young girl to go to college and become a teacher who inspired her student to become an author who wrote the book and inspired the inventor to change our lives forever. Who are you in this chain? Are we all not part of this picture and part of this chain? You see the difference between being successful and significant. Successful people get what they want. Those of us who are striving to live lives of significance actually want what we get at the end of the day. So we refuse to die with our music still in us. So it was interesting for me to watch you engage in one another's conversation and philosophy of life in defining the success principles. And now what I want to do is I want to replace them with the highest laws that are not debatable, that guarantee a life of significance, so that regardless of where we fit in this cycle of life, we are significant and we continually become significant, which is the new art rendition, A Culture of Significance. I know you can't read those. Let's just talk about the significance. Actually, let me just point out what the art symbolizes. It's an oak tree. So the acorns produce the fruits, the results, the mighty oak. But the roots are so deep, and they're so powerful, and they're so strong, and that's why I wanted to visit the Tree of Life here in Bahrain. Because I can only imagine how deep that root structure must be to find water in a desolate place with nothing else growing in sight. And it continually thrives and grows. And isn't it interesting that because it is so strong and so unique, giving of what it has to give, it attracts all of us, even from the United States of America, to come to Bahrain and not go to the mall, but to seek out some way where we can actually see this magnificent symbol of significance.